Please don't get demonetized, please don't get demonetized, please don't get demonetized. So, a few years ago, I was browsing away and I get an email from Kickstarter. It claimed to have found the perfect D&D product for me, an attractive elf tied up in belts. That's also a book. Then I got interested because this book was asking for only $500 to fund and had raised over $50,000. Hot elf aside, that is crazy for a first-time publisher. So, I bought the damn thing! Welcome to the world of Adult Dungeons & Dragons 5e, where the E stands for emotional damage if you're a delicate little snowflake like me. This is Kinks and Cantrips. So, what actually is this book? Well, let's see how it describes itself. Before we start, let me be upfront about what you'll find in this campaign guide. Kink, ropes, chains, whips, submission, dominance, pain, pleasure, and a cornucopia of other sexual topics run amok through these pages. I also hope this book helps you explore and celebrate the concepts of kink while exploring and cherishing yourself. Okay, so that intro tells us two things. Firstly, this isn't a joke. Although this book is funny, it's serious. It's not a meme. It's not 50,000 Shades of Grey. Two, it aims to educate, and any D&D book with a philosophy is a good thing. One of the best D&D books ever made is Dr. Drolin's Dictionary of Dinosaurs, a book made by real paleontologists that gives stat blocks and history and biology and behavior and ecology and academic references all about dinosaurs. It's designed to teach you about dinosaurs while putting them into Dungeons & Dragons. This book is awesome. The passion and the knowledge of the creators just drips off every page. Any book that sets out with a vision to educate and isn't just a random assortment of playable materials is automatically interesting. It doesn't mean it's going to be good, but you're guaranteed to at least get something. And in Kinks and Cantrips, the interesting stuff starts right away. The introduction has definitions of stuff like kink, consent, BDSM, knowing your limits, checking limits, the fetishization of bodies and cultures, safe words, hard limits, tolerance, words of freedom. But I know what you're really here for. Let's talk about the subclasses. And dom classes, am I right? Just a little submissive dominant joke for you there. This isn't really my area, but I think that was a clever joke. But before diving in, this book actually does something quite cool. It introduces two new conditions, pleasure and pain, which operate a lot like exhaustion. When stuff happens to you, you might get a point of pain or a point of pleasure. If you get too many points in either pleasure or pain, it is bad. You are stunned for a round if you reach too much pleasure, for example. The amount of points you have in those stats also impact other things in the game. You might get a bonus to your damage rolls equal to the amount of pain you have, for example. If you go a full minute without gaining pleasure or pain, you lose them. So this really is a combat-focused mechanic which doesn't last long. Most of the subclasses in this book interact with these mechanics, so let's dive into the meat and to veg of this book and see what they've cooked up. Hey! Hey, you! Oh, yeah? Why do we never hang out anymore? Am I just your token British friend? What? That's crazy. I've got loads of British friends. Name one British person. Randomized token! Randomized token! No! Create and customize monsters, player characters, and NPCs with Cheipeku tokens. There's hundreds of tokens ready to go, with literally billions of variations you can create for any type of game and any situation. You can use it for NPCs, craft your perfect player character, and all subscribers get 5 new tokens every week with accessory and color options. Change the frame, change the background, add icons, change the face, change the accessories, or just cycle through presets. You can even hit the randomize button to quickly generate multiple tokens to give every NPC in a group their own identity in seconds. Access hundreds of tokens with billions of variations and 20 plus new tokens dropping every month at cheipeku.com/D&D shorts. Give every character the personality and life they deserve with awesome tokens from Cheipeku. Link in description. So there are 29 subclasses for the core 12 classes in D&D Kinks and Cantrips, and there's a whole new class, the Escapologist, with 2 subclasses. Every subclass in the book is themed around some type of quirk. The Way of the Wick Monk is sort of inspired by melting candles on people. I've seen the video for All the Small Things by Blink-182, so this is a thing, or at least it was a thing in 1999. The subclass gets custom wax gauntlets that enhance your strikes. If you hit a creature with 2 or more unarmed strikes on a turn, they gain 1 point of pain. You can spend key points to deal extra fire damage to a creature you've hit, etc. At later levels, you deal more fire damage and your reach increases. It's a pretty cool monk subclass all in. Maybe I'm just ignorant, but if you didn't tell me this was a kinky thing, I probably wouldn't even notice. But more on that in a bit. But my favorite bit of this whole book is this section here. Every subclass gets one of these, and it's just a real-life description of what the quirk inspiring the subclass is, and how to practice it safely if you want to. For example, it tells you to choose a wax that melts at a low temperature so as not to actually hurt someone if you want to do this in real life. Although getting wax poured on you is probably quite a niche desire, it's cool that there are health and safety discussions in the book. Another subclass is the Slinglash Ranger, which is all about paint and, to an extent, latex. As you can see, she's sort of painted this guy to the wall here. The mechanics of the subclass are pretty cool as well. You get a companion ooze, like how the Drake Warden get a companion dragon. You also upgrade a sling, which is a massively underrated weapon in D&D. It now deals 1d8 on a hit, and you can fire globs of your own ooze companion at enemies. The way it works is, you can take hit points away from your ooze familiar to add an effect to your next attack. I've never seen a mechanic like this before, and it's awesome. For example, at the cost of 5 hit points from your ooze, you can make an attack roll, and on a hit, the target is grappled. It's a long-range grapple effect as your own ooze wraps around the enemy's feet. There's an Alabaster Warlock subclass, which is all about hypnosis and mind control. Pretty straightforward stuff. You can charm a humanoid of CR 1/4 or below and have them fight for you, and as you go up in levels, they get stronger. And look, there's a little explanation here on hypnosis and why some people might like it. Again, 29 subclasses in this book for the core D&D 12 classes. Some I really can't show, and we'll get to why in a second, but there's loads. They've also got like a drow fighter who exclusively uses whips. All the obvious stuff is here. If you're thinking, wow, that's a lot of dominating, aggressive-themed subclasses, you're right. There are also loads of support-themed subclasses, but I can't show you them. In this book, supporting your allies means really helping them out, Baldur's Gate 3 style. I do want to talk about the original class introduced in this book though, the Escapologist. Escapologists devote themselves to studying the survival of dangerous situations. They often specialize in lockpicking, unfastening even the most expert of knots, and enduring the unendurable. Basically, think of a mix of barbarian and rogue, and you are pretty close. You have a d12 hit dice, which is the highest possible in the game, plus heavy armor proficiency, which even barbarians don't get. I won't go through the whole class here because that would take a whole video in itself, but there's a lot of features around goading enemies to attack you and reducing and avoiding damage. They've also got features that change depending on the type of armor you're wearing, which adds a ton of customization to an already flexible class. I love this idea, and I want to explore making a subclass based around something like this myself. There are also species in the book, and it's D&D versions of the things you might expect. You've got your furry race, of course, the fur folk, and it's actually pretty cool because unlike D&D, which has animal-based species like Leonin and Harangon, the fur folk are designed in a way that they can be any animal. You choose 3 traits of your choice from a huge selection. You can grab flippers to give yourself a swim speed, pack tactics is here as an option, thick skin for +1 AC, tentacles for an extended reach and advantage on grapples, etc. It's like a more fleshed out version of the Simic hybrid from core D&D, and that's something you see a lot of in third-party publishing. Ideas that maybe in a WotC book you might get 2 or 3 choices, in here you get like 40. It's one of the reasons why when you start going third-party, you can never really go back. There's just so much more stuff. Of course, there's nothing inherently adult about this species. Yes, it's obviously referencing furry culture, but you don't have to be a furry to play an animal-themed race. I hope, as I've played many. There's also a cubeling, which is like a goo-themed species, a bit like a plasmoid or a humanoid gelatinous ooze, and a zicubus species. These are kind of like tieflings, honestly, but specifically the spawn of a temptation demon, which is like a succubus or an incubus, which are already creatures in core D&D. There's also some other species, and I can't show them. We'll get to why in a moment. There's also spells and feats in the book, and this is where things really lean into the silly side. There's a second level spell called Onslaught of 1000 Phalluses, for example, which summons a whirlwind of spectral objects that swirl around a creature. This is meant to be funny. I am certain this isn't supposed to be sexy or anything like that. There's also spells like Aftercare, which is a healing first level spell, or Epitome of Tentacles, which is kind of like a 9th level version of Evard's Black Tentacles from regular D&D. And once you're in the headspace that this book puts you into, Evard's Black Tentacles starts sounding kind of sus, doesn't it? As far as the spell mechanics go, yeah, they're D&D spells. The same is true for the feats and the monster stat blocks. They're just pretty typical D&D stuff with some quirky flavor. Which brings me to the biggest thing I kept thinking about while reading through this book. All of this stuff, mechanically, is solid, considering I bought this book basically based on the, ooh, this is weird factor. The material is really good. It didn't need to be even half this good to sell, I reckon. If you rename pleasure and pain to something like hope and terror, for example, and maybe tweak a few words here and there, this would kind of just be an ordinary D&D book, at least in terms of the written material. However, it can never be that because of the artistic material. Let's talk about it. Hopefully I've done quite a good job of hiding how heavily censored this video is. I can't show you most subclasses because this channel would get slapped with a ban faster than Chris Rock at the 94th Academy Awards. It's actually quite jarring to flip through the pages which have relatively normal D&D art, and then boom, you've got booty in your face and a whole lot more. If I flipped over this page, this channel would be taken down, which in a way is a shame because it limits the reach of this book. But at the same time, it's what gives the book its whole identity. Of course, to the people who made this book and the people who are part of these online communities, I should imagine this is very tame art. I know we say this is weird, but it's only unusual to us. But at the same time, I am immature enough to find it funny. Even now, though, I'm not really sure who this is for. Is this something you're meant to play with your partner? Is this kind of like a foreplay thing? If so, that is very funny. Hey babe, are you in the mood? Good. Roll up a character. When I said I wanted to get you in the sheets, I was referring to the character sheets, yes. But jokes aside, from the way this book is presented, I believe the authors intend people to play it, and play it seriously, not just laugh about how, silly it is. They wouldn't bother creating actually interesting mechanics and 250 pages of game materials otherwise. That said, just because this isn't for me, I am really happy that I bought it. The biggest crime any artistic project can be is to be boring, and this isn't boring. Whenever anyone comes around to my house and I show some weird D&D stuff, this is always the thing they're drawn to. It's a great conversation piece. I should also mention, this book is cheap, but that does come with a downside. Because this is cheaply printed by Drive-Thru RPG's POD service, some of the binding glue has spilled onto the pages on my copy. So basically, some of the pages are actually stuck together. It's not a huge problem. As you can see, they peel back just fine. They do leave this little mark though. However, it is way too funny not to mention that this book showed up with pages stuck together. That is objectively hilarious. I promise it was like that before I got my hands on it. The comparison I made at the start of this video to Dr. Drolin's Dinosaurs is fair, I think. Kinks and Cantrips has good information about healthy explorations of relationships, and I learned stuff. It's not judgmental, it takes itself seriously, and it is very clearly labeled as adult. I am also fiercely in support of any independent publishing. We all remember the OGL, where Wizards of the Coast tried to steal the right to create freely from this community. One of the fake excuses they gave for that was a moral one. They claimed that a $1 billion company was the moral guardian we all needed to censor this hobby. So seeing someone publish something so outrageously family unfriendly is a reminder that we are free. Nobody can tell you what you can or or can't publish in the name of art and game design. So, do I recommend Kinks and Cantrips? Well, if you're curious about these things and want a non-judgmental and helpful resource to explore them, then sure. However, there are probably better resources out there that don't also include a load of irrelevant D&D content if that's the only thing you care about. But if you're both curious about this stuff and into TTRPGs, then this book is probably the best thing that ever existed for you. So, hell yeah. However, there is one final downside, right? And that's that once you've broken a taboo, you can't break it again. So, although this is interesting, I think it probably marks the last we've ever seen of... What? They made a sequel? It made $100,000? Damn. But hey, if you want awesome D&D expansions that don't feature elven titties and butt cracks on every third page, you can grab them from the D&D Shorts Patreon. I create a monthly magazine of stunningly illustrated content on there, including new species, subclasses, rules expansions, and ready-to-play adventures. Your support on Patreon and through YouTube memberships makes these videos possible as we struggle our way through the YouTube algorithm. Remember to like and subscribe, check out other videos on the channel, and yeah, that's all I got. I'll see you next time.